Okay. I see the numbers ticking up, but why don't we kick off in the spirit of time? Welcome. My name is Chris Legg. I'm a senior managing director at Progress, and our discussion today on video. That's a high level for a lot of interesting detail, and I'll let Chris and team sort of introduce themselves in a couple of pages. Let me just set the stage if I can. Greg, if you want to flip the page. For some of you who participated in our past events, they've been interesting around health tech, fintech, enterprise, a whole bunch of things. This is kind of coming towards the end of that series, I would say, and just sort of some new formats for playing with. We've got a whole BTV video series, which we'll be distributing around. It's not a live event. It's a pre-recorded. And then I think many of you have been participants in our Progress Connect. That's the one day that we had at Gillette Stadium and various other interesting venues. We're going to try a different format for that, a little bit sort of sign of the times. We're going to come to you in different cities and kind of do a CEO dinner series in 5 or 6 cities around the US. So expect to see that in the fall and winter of this year coming up. Next, just in terms of some quick formatting rules, this is really meant to be as interactive as possible. And so it'll be one way at the beginning, but please jump in and we'll talk about how to do that a little later on. You can raise your hand virtually by hitting the reaction button down at the bottom. And then it is Chatham House rules. So sort of what goes on in this discussion stays in this discussion. Would appreciate if you could do that. Next page. On our sponsors. So we have 2 sponsors, which we're really thankful for today. The first is Cerity. That's the former Banco, who've been a good friend of the firm on the wealth management side. Really just great folks and kind of well-versed in wealth management and other aspects. I can go on if there's anything else. Yeah, thank you. From CohnReznick, I think Darren's here on the call. So Darren, I'll let you give a voiceover if you want.
Yeah, everyone, thanks for letting us join and be one of the sponsors of this event. CohnReznick is a national accounting firm. We have a dedicated national media practice in a variety of disciplines, including tax, audit, and consulting, and just been very glad to be here.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, both Cohn and Cerity and Banco have been really good friends of the firm and just great team for what they do. I can't recommend them enough. Next page. So this is the last for me, but a great point because I think many of you have touched us on various parts of the spin wheel, if you will, but it really speaks to kind of where we are today at Progress. I use that as kind of one word because there's Progress Partners, the investment bank, there's Progress Connect, what we're having today, there's Progress Ventures, there's Progress SPAC. It's really been a kind of a growing platform in a lot of ways. And many of you know us through sort of the banking. That's the part from kind of noon to 4 of the spin wheel. Selling companies has been our bread and butter, doing more and more on the buy side. And of course, some capital raise in the sectors that you saw earlier on in terms of some of the topics for this roundtable. The fund, that's sort of the part from 8 to noon, if you will, on the clock, has been around, but really has increased in size and significance, I would say, with Fund 4. We've got some exciting LPs in there, and TransUnion, Liberty, Sinclair, and others. And we just made our 6th investment, a company called Narrative. So that fund is already half full, Fund 4. And it feels really good. And the track records since funds 1 through 3 continue to improve. It's obviously been a good period for liquidity in a lot of venture funds, but our fund kind of went from good to great at some level in terms of its performance. And it's all part of the network and the EIRs in the center here. And that sort of funnels through everything, whether we're playing investor or advisor. And our most recent piece from the part from sort of 4 to 8 at the bottom is on the SPAC. And we're in the market with that. We've been in there about 2 or 3 months, seeing a lot of interesting assets. But again, it's the people on the phone, it's the EIRs, it's the network, it's the full-time people at Progress that really make this sort of whole machine, this whole wheel spin, and spin in a pretty effective way. My personal background, I came from pure venture and pure banking. I always thought if you could kind of merge these two on a combined platform, call it a merchant bank, it works really well. And I think you're seeing the results of that. And so keep working with us. We enjoy it. And the platform is really humming along. Just want to say that. That's a good lead into a vertical that we spent a ton of time in. And there's just a lot happening almost hourly, it feels like, if you're catching the news stream. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you and your panel for today.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks very much. And thanks everybody for joining our discussion today on the fast evolving revenue future of the television industry. We've got some great panelists to discuss this topic with today. We've got Dave from Simul Media, Lockman from Roku, and James from Effective. And we'll be getting to them in just a second. I do just want to set the stage. First of all, I do want to say I have very much enjoyed being one of the EIRs, or the executive in residence, with the Progress Partners folks. And my co-EIRs are just a pleasure to meet you all and work with you all so far. It's been pretty cool. And I'm happy to be hosting this discussion today. It could be the most exciting time to be involved in the TV industry. I've been in the media industry for over 27 years, and I have just not seen a speed and volume of transformation as we are seeing happening in front of us today. And there is so much more to happen. It's so nascent right now. And hopefully today's discussion among these panelists, as well as this full group, because as Chris said, this is expected to be a group roundtable. We'll have a moment for everybody to chime in towards the end of the discussion. We'll open a window to some of the things that may be. So with that, I would love to get our discussion started with the boys. And Lockman, Dave, and James, why don't we start with Dave? Can each of you just quickly orient us? Do you consider your company to be a programmer, a platform, an MVPD, a VMVPD, or a DSP, or something else? Go ahead, Dave. Why don't you start?
Okay. I'm always afraid of the acronyms because they all change like every year. But we operate a platform at Simul Media. We're a demand side platform for marketers and agencies that want to buy data optimized campaigns across linear TV, streaming, and video gaming, and work with probably about 150 large national brands doing that today.
Awesome. Lockman, what say you?
Good question, Chris. Happy to be here and be part of the conversation. And I think my answer would be maybe a bit of all or maybe none of them, or two, because ultimately we look at Roku as a consumer first streaming company. That's what we are. That's the DNA of the company. But to a specific question, are we a publisher? Are we a platform? Are we a VMVPD? Are we a DSP? We are everything, right? We have a platform where a content distribution platform where consumers can come in and watch great content. We are a publisher on the platform too. We have our own channel called the Roku channel, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. So that is definitely part of what we do. We have our own demand side platform, the DSP. We went out and acquired DataZoo, the erstwhile DSP, and we rebranded that as the OneView ad platform. And advertising is an important way, whether programmatically or not, it's an important way in which we monetize our users. And increasingly, even the Roku channel, we have SVOD content, premium subscription content that from Showtime and Stasi and Epic and all of that, right? So all plays into what we do. So it's a bit of everything, and ultimately we are a streaming company focused primarily on the consumers.
Thanks, Lockman. Yeah, I'm a big observer of all the different and kinds of businesses that Roku seems to be getting into. It's kind of amazing, the differentiated set. Another company that has a lot of different businesses that it's in is Comcast. And James from Effective, you want to talk a little bit about where you sort of see your group?
Sure. So yeah, Comcast, it's a big answer because we have Sky Cable, Comcast Cable, and NBC. I'll consider NBC and Sky at a scope for this conversation. I work for Comcast Advertising, which rolls into the cable division. Comcast Cable overall, if I was to say, what are we? We're a connectivity business, and similar to Lockman, have lots of kind of elements around that. So therefore, I would say we're if we had to pick one definition, more a platform centered around our broadband business and our X1 platform, where we deliver our entertainment services. Comcast Advertising itself houses two companies. One is a company called Freewheel, which is an ad tech business that provides buy-side and sell-side software and a marketplace. And then the company I run is Effective. We're about 3,500 people across 66 markets, and work with marketers and and agencies, from small businesses through to the national holdcos, so about 30,000 different clients, helping them deliver their audiences across TV and streaming TV inventory, largely based on Comcast data.
Awesome. Thanks, James. And I'm certainly not gonna be asking you or Lachman to comment on the speculation that you two companies may be locking up anytime soon that everybody's read about. But I would just looking into the future a bit. So this is kind of we want to talk about what does this ecosystem look like 5 years from now? If you want to just talk a little bit about the superpower, like the competitive advantage that exists within the Comcast umbrella, and then where do you see that? How do you see that evolving over the next several years? What's going to become more important to Comcast and effective?
So for Comcast Cable, I'll sort of focus at that level to start with. We pivoted and continue to pivot the business around being in the business of connectivity, as I said a second ago, and that sort of centers our efforts are centered around our broadband business, which has obviously driven a ton of growth. But now it's about wrapping products and services that add value to our customers, sort of around the theme of connectivity. So examples of that are the investments we're making in in-home and out-of-home Wi-Fi, investments we're making and products and services around home security, or the work we've been doing to scale the Xfinity Mobile business, which is both a sort of growth engine for Comcast, but also it helps drive churn reduction as well. Video on top of that remains a really important sort of element of what we do. And as you know, we've invested a lot over the years in building out a kind of scalable and flexible platform for delivering those entertainment services, X1. And really the focus there is how do we provide or meet consumers where they want to engage with that content, which is reflective of where eyeballs are sort of moving. So what I mean by that is, of course, we want to continue to serve as best we can through X1 platform those that want sort of the full video bundle, but we also want to provide kind of access to video services for those that are just broadband only customers, which is where we rolled out the Flex box to enable that. So Flex is super interesting for us we're taking the kind of best features of X1 and just making them available to broadband only customers. We've got about 3.5 million devices kind of deployed today. And whether it be across X1 or Flex, we've got about 250 OTT services that are sort of plugged in through that platform. So again, we can help consumers kind of reach the content they want through us as a kind of connectivity business.
Now you mentioned it's a box. Do you see this as evolving into sort of an operating system model, like in actual TV sets over the next several years?
I mean, that's been reported publicly that it's something the companies look like. I think we're really proud of the technology we've got in X1, and so just want to kind of continue to surround kind of our core business with products and services that continue to
so that puts you guys effectively in the competition with the Amazon Fire Stick and the Roku operating system as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of it. There are many companies out there that are looking to enable households to reach reach whatever streaming content or other content they want, and Comcast, as I said, is in that business of providing best in class kind of connectivity, including to video through our X1 platform.
I think it's fascinating to see a legacy company transforming itself like that. Lachman, Roku's made a huge splash, obviously. You're a leader in the industry. You're innovating all the time. You guys are out there on devices. You guys are out there in the operating systems of TVs. I'm really curious about your view on sort of how does that distribution model evolve? Where do you see that going over the next 5 years? Are there moats that you have to create that, maybe there's some competitive danger from either a Comcast, as James just described, or from Amazon or from Disney, the OEMs? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. before I get to that, I'm also a user of X1. I have Comcast in my home, and people ask me like, "You're at Roku, haven't you cut your cord and not? And why are you still on still on cable?" But X1 is a great platform. I actually enjoy using it, and it's I'm a product guy, so I'm always spending time with other platforms that look like Roku and do similar services. So I'm a fan.
Well,
of
Lachman, you're supposed to be provocative and arguing with you.
Right.
You're not
Yeah, I
supposed
know
to
that.
tell
I
them
know that.
about
We'll
the
We'll get to
product.
the provocative part. We'll start with the friendly banter initially.
But thank you for saying that, because he makes a good point. Is that Roku and Comcast, just like Comcast and Amazon, like collaborate in a bunch of areas as well. So it's not as cut and dry as competition. I think there are areas our companies work really closely together and will continue to. So it's not that cut and dry. I know you're trying to be provocative, but
Maybe there's a little more truth to that Wall Street Journal article than we all thought.
no, it's pure
Okay.
speculation. Pure speculation.
Lachlan, tell
lot
us
of
about
areas
the
to
evolution of your tell us a little bit about the evolution of your
Thanks, Chris. So I mean, when I answered to your previous question, it might sound like it is more complicated than it is. We are a bit of a publisher, we are a publisher, we are a platform, we have a DSP and so on. But there is a larger picture here, and the underlying business model, I think, is very simple. We like to believe it is very simple. It is to generate a simple flywheel here, right? Which is, we are a content distribution platform. We want to actually distribute great content to consumers and monetize by letting advertisers reach those consumers, right? That's the model, not earth shattering, but the focus is primarily on the consumer. If you ask me what are our modes, what are the different pillars in which we will put our bets on and hopefully evolve over the next few years, it is 4 major pillars. One is around advertising and ad tech itself. It's an important way in which we monetize our users. We've spent a lot of time building what we believe is one of the preeminent OTT connected TV ad tech platform out there. We have invested in demand side platform capabilities. We have invested in sell side platform capabilities where we integrate with the freewheels and the Google ad tech stack. We have invested in targeting and measurement capabilities, better data capabilities, and increasingly in that area, our focus is going to be machine learning and AI to better ensure that the right user, I know this is cliched, but the user sees the right ad on his TV in a way that is germane to him, right, relevant to him. So that is a big focus area for us, and we'll continue to evolve our ad tech in OTT where we can differentiate it, because ultimately we do believe connected TV in some way, the holy grail. It is one of those platforms that's uniquely situated for the entire marketing funnel. If you're a brand marketer, trying to reach a user for incremental reach, you can go from your traditional TV budgets to connected TV. If you're a performance marketer trying to drive digital-like results, connected TV is right in your alley, and you can actually get all of those capabilities there. So that's one big moat for us on our ad tech capabilities, and that's where you've seen our investment in DataZoo, our acquisition of Nielsen's advanced video advertising division, and so on. That's number 1. Number 2 is the Roku channel and our content on the platform. We need to get great content on the platform. We work with our partners on that, but we also believe that AVOD and ad-supported content has a huge opportunity in the US and internationally. Even now, free is the single most searched term on Roku right now. So when you go to Roku's universal search, or when you go to Roku's website, the most common term searched is free, which is people are always, there is this hunger for free content. And when we talk about advertising and the challenges of advertising and Netflix's model of no ads, 100% SVOD, there is this big mainstream out there that is ready to actually consume ad-supported content as long as it is a fair value exchange. So we focus on great ad experiences, but also in content that we own, and we want to get really good content there. That is where we work with our distribution partners, with studios, and increasingly on the original. So how do we actually scale up our content offering is number 2. Third goes into your question around distribution and operating systems. That's TV. Yeah, how do we actually scale that up, right? So Roku TVs, and it's been a model that's worked quite well for us. We license our operating system to 15 plus TV OEMs right there. We are invested and interested in going beyond that. And so opportunities for us to actually get a user to easily have access to great content on our operating system is a function of us being great partners with OEMs and other when players out there. So that is the third moat, and we are looking at ways in which we can further accelerate that opportunity. And the last one for us is international. Roku is unlike the others. Roku is unlike our main competitors like Google and Amazon. We are very much a US-centric company. Yet our ambition, our aspiration is to definitely take the model that has worked for us in the US and take it internationally. We believe ultimately the consumer in the US is not very different from a consumer anywhere else. A great consumer experience should resonate irrespective of which country you are in, as long as we can have the right content relationships and the right partnerships, kind of scaling up in UK, Canada, Mexico, where we're already there, but bigger in EU and LATAM and APAC. That is an area where we'll see Roku make a lot more inroads and a lot more partnerships and so on. So that is the fourth moat in which we believe we have a great opportunity to grow.
Thank you very much, Lachman. I do want to ask, I mean, do you foresee a time when there isn't a need for the device distribution, or do you think that's always going to need to be a factor for some reason?
It's an excellent question. TVs have become more and more cheaper. One of the advantages with the pure device model was the fact that you can just upgrade to a Roku, you can upgrade to a different OS and all the content available there without going and buying a different TV, right? It was very, very simple. It was very portable, especially the stick version of ours. It sells very, very well. The most common Roku device that we sell is the stick. It's $39 and you can just take it around, and it's seen in Airbnbs, it's seen in, in guest houses and all of that, right? So that model, our overall inkling is, it is probably, there will be a phase where it will be primarily about TVs. And if you look at our latest numbers, right, around 35-40% of all TVs sold in the US is a Roku TV. And we are getting a bigger and bigger share of it. It is mostly a three-legged race right now. It's between, outside of, if you take out Roku, then the other three players are basically Samsung, LG, and Vizio, effectively four big OEMs out there today. And my take was the TVs, I would have expected the adoption of TVs or the migration away from TVs to be faster. What we're seeing is both are growing at the same pace, but you are right, over time, it's hard to say whether it's 3 years or 5 years or maybe even 10 years. It's a bit like we talk about linear and the migration from linear to streaming.
Okay.
It is there, but not really there. There's still a big RAM time for it, right? Similar to that, I do think there is a value that devices and sticks do play, and that will continue to be there, but it won't be the majority. It will increasingly be the minority of devices that we sell.
Okay. Thank you, Lachman. Appreciate it. Dave, I know you're chomping at the bit, my friend. Let's first off, any reactions to what either James or Lachman have said, and then obviously I'd love to hear a little bit about how you see the role that you play in the industry evolving. In particular, how are you making that transition from a heavy linear video capacity to now probably a lot more addressable, connected, and where do you see your business 4 or 5 years from now?
So yeah, the first thing is, I think, what you heard from James and Lachman I think their strategies or companies are taking are the right strategies. They're obviously moving towards where the market's going and where people are going. I think, we see the market very similarly. We're attacking it differently because for us, it's a very simple focus, which is, if it's follow the money, we're all about advertising and really all about focus on video, sight, sound, and motion advertising. We have been a longtime pioneer in data-driven linear TV, believing that the first challenge that we had as more digitally oriented marketers and agencies came into the market was they wanted to buy TV like they bought digital. They wanted a digital approach. So you needed more interfaces, more analytics, more data targeting. You needed to plan and aggregate on the basis of audience, not just content. Even though linear continues to dominate the screen viewing time, as we just saw last week with Nielsen's The Gauge that came out and showed that streaming is now 26% of viewing, but there's a vast majority that it's not. We started working by sort of multiplexing in connected TV and streaming a couple years ago, and the area that we're particularly excited about from an inventory expansion standpoint is video gaming. And one of the big reasons is that the PC and the console have been connected to TVs for some time without advertising support, but we're now starting to see a lot of streaming activity happening in video game environments. Like you see the things that are happening with Epic, for example, and Fortnite and other things. And so so the big thing is really
Is that streaming or is that in-game integration?
streaming. You're seeing streamed movies, streamed streamed concerts.
Right.
So yeah, no, you're actually seeing companies. You see a lot of the games are also putting their esports tournaments inside the game now, no longer just putting them out on Twitch and YouTube, because you have an authenticated experience. I mean, it's like you brought up when we were talking beforehand a little bit, the NFL Network's announcement that it's going to look for partners. So think about this. So on my board is Phil Garasio, and he was the first head of the NFL Network and launched it. That's probably 30 years ago.
Yeah.
If you're going to launch a proprietary programming network 30 years ago, you called up all the multi-channel video programming distributors and you did deals with them and you distributed it either in a partnership or fully owned. You wouldn't do that today. I mean, you would talk to Comcast for X1, you would talk to Roku for their distribution. But maybe if you're NFL, you talk to EA and Madden and you say, hey, wait a minute, you have actually the best audience already and you've got an authenticated experience. Why wouldn't I want to be putting my stream inside there, particularly because when it comes to 18 to 34-year-old males, you have more of them in your game than any TV group has in aggregate.
And Amazon's clearly trying to grab a hold of that with their NFL deals, and they're going to be streaming the NFL
Sure.
on Twitch, right? Speaking of Amazon, I'm curious what you got a point of view on their potential in this space. Are they doing things right? Are they, keeping up with Roku?
I think that Amazon has shown us they have an extraordinary capacity to execute. They have a focus and a relentlessness in it. I think they've grown by far the most of any TV video media company in the last 5 years, and they continue to show acceleration. So they are, and now that they're buying really, really targeted content, and the best part for Amazon is that they have basically adjacent market subsidization. They don't need to make money on their video investments out of video. They can make it out of e-commerce or storage. So they're by far the company to watch in my view.
So I want to know about Laukman and James. Are your companies pursuing commerce as a big part of the business strategy? Laukman, why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, commerce is an interesting area for us. To Dave's point, I do agree with what Dave just said on Amazon. Again, not trying to be overly friendly here, but it is true. Amazon has an exceptional capability to execute well. They have done very well with picking up adjacent markets and moving there very quickly. They are a large company with deep pockets, so there is so much that they can do. And we at Roku, really, it is good to be paranoid in this space because things move very, very quickly, and we're always looking at ways in which we can learn from others. Commerce is an interesting area for us. Amazon has a very, very clear advantage there, not just from a pure e-commerce perspective, which they are gargantuan, which they're very, very big, but also the kind of data that they collect, shopper data, for instance, drives so much of their differentiation in the ad tech space, right? When we talk to marketers, when we go to programmatic platforms and programmatic media buyers and talk about our own DSP, oftentimes the reason they use an Amazon DSP in lieu of something else is not because of better features and better capabilities, it is because of access to Amazon data, their shopper data. So they do use their advantages in one market and an adjacent market to actually get them going and kind of tidy the initial.
So is that a business you want to be in 5 years from now in a big way? On your own platform, selling products on the Roku platform. I mean,
it's still very early to say. I mean, there are two ways to look at it, right? Experiential commerce, or we internally sometimes call it as TV commerce, for instance, is very, very early. There are a few parts to it. There is the targeting and measurement aspect of it, which is fairly simple. But the larger part of it is the interactive experience, right? How do you actually think through an experience on TV where, beyond the historical HSN QVCs, how do we go beyond that and create commerce experiences that actually is something that is relatable to the user, that can drive impulse buying and shopping, and can help create carts and ultimately end up in a transaction, right? There's a bunch of work to be done there. We are invested in it. We believe there is opportunity there. We don't think the consumer is yet ready to make large purchases from their TV. The habituation aspect of it is still early, and there is work to be done there. And you will see that evolve over time. And if you looked at the upfront from Amazon or YouTube, they were also talking about, add to cart functionality directly from the TV, shoppable advertising capabilities, and so on. And all of these things have been there for quite some time. We will continue to evolve there. And that is an area that is interesting to us, but there is a lot of work to be done there, especially on the consumer side and the
Yeah, I think if you look at the APAC region, there's a lot of leading edge stuff going on there that you could probably learn from. James, is there an interest on the Comcast side to be getting into this?
So I'll answer it from the advertising side in Comcast. It's not core strategy for us right now, and it's early days relative to other priorities. That said, there's an interesting sort of pivot from the topic of commerce to data to something that is a massive priority for us. And by the way, Dave, I know you probably have strong views on this as well. For all the big media companies, and that's around proof of performance. We're super focused on a series of pivots that we believe need to be kind of driven across the industry. And I'll get to sort of proof of performance. Like, one is moving from transacting against content to transacting against audience, underpinned by quality sort of first party deterministic data. And that's particularly for kind of larger, more traditional buyers, sort of trusting the data. And what's been interesting in COVID is COVID's accelerated a lean in to trust the data and move to more audience-based executions as programming schedules changed, as sports went away. A lot of marketers were like, I don't know where my audience was. And we were like, we can tell you where your audience is. They haven't gone away, they've just moved. And that's been an interesting sort of pivot. And we'll continue. The second one is moving from something that Dave said, buying linear and digital as these separate things, to everything being multi-screen. That has to happen and will happen, even if the execution engines underneath may be different for a period of time while we move over X number of years. And I think it will take more than 5 years to full IP infrastructure, which is where the world will ultimately go. And the third is moving away from Nielsen GRPs to everything being executed on impressions. And if you're going to move to an audience-based multi-screen world, it has to be executed on an impression basis. I think that's the major thing we're focused on as well. And then finally, getting to my starting point, improve performance. We think that not in all cases, but in many cases, there's an over-allocation of marketing dollars to bottom of funnel performance marketers, largely led by the platform companies, who are taking a ton of credit for the value being driven by more top and mid funnel providers like ourselves. And that comes to the point of improved performance. Is the onus is on us to better demonstrate the results that we drive down the purchase funnel and sort of take back that credit. And I say that because Amazon, of course, has a big advantage there in many respects. But there's a huge opportunity because the ROI, I think truth is on our side in terms of the ROI that we kind of drive. But the platform companies have done an incredible job because they're closest to the sort of last mile sale, taking that credit back. So that's a huge kind of strategic focus. And those are the things that we're really focused on relative to something like commerce.
Yep, and I will inject just a Chris May. I know I'm the moderator, but I do have this vision of the video industry becoming probably a smaller in terms of spend size channel for marketers, but far more effective and far more efficient, far more dynamic and measurable, and hopefully will get the credit that it deserves because of all of the different things that it actually does deliver in addition to the bottom funnel.
It's well said. That is the opportunity. Is that it sounds simple as a tagline.
There's a big but. There's a big but, and it gets to a big question I have for this group, which is, and I think maybe Dave and James may have a bigger answer for this, which is, when the hell is this industry going to find a path towards shifting a larger footprint of the linear ad avail to addressable? Dave, can you give us a pathway on that?
Yeah, well, so I think I'll say two things. One, I am gonna push back on your point that there'll be less video spend out of marketers going forward. I think there'll be more video spend. Because
the reason is there may not be capacity for it.
Well, that's pricing. That's all a question about pricing. And I think that, like, as effective, works, like James knows, he gets a lot more pricing on a unit because it's local and has a specific concentration and a competitive set than someone in NBCU can get for the same spot in national. And so a lot of it is how you do yield management and yield maximization, which are the areas we will see. So I think that is going to drive it up. And I think once we do a better job of measuring the performance at the top of the funnel, and the brand is basically just, it's a metric for future sales. And as we get better and better in understanding how to connect the dots between those. And
Yeah, if the more addressable it gets, the more measurable it's going to be, the better it's going to
Right.
perform.
But then I'm going to disagree that it's less about the addressable than it's about the optimization. It's how you can better utilize a pool or package of inventory to deliver the result. And so I think that what's going to happen is we're not going to have someone by fiat suddenly bring things together. I am certain for sure, and I apologize for anyone that's involved in these, that the last thing we need is another 5-acronym consortium to try to solve a problem. Since I've been around in this business for 30 years now, and I've seen come and go at least 35 industry-led consortiums that are going to solve it. I think that what we will see is that, to your point, Chris, we are going to see a lot more addressability. I think it's because we see more digitally born, digitally native marketers trying to scale their customer acquisition growth and recognizing that high reach, high scale video can get them there. They do want to close the loop. They do want to buy right off the bat. They don't just want to buy content. They don't just want to buy gross rating points. They don't just want to buy sex age demos. They want to buy tighter targets. They want to leverage first party data. And so that is bringing, let's say, it's less about the rifle shot addressability than it is what I'll call the choking the shotgun blast and bringing down a lot tighter things. And so I think that the market is heading that way. And I think if we look at the 65 billion spent in television in the United States today, probably less than 5 billion is spent with any kind of real sense of data driven much deeper than sex age demos. And I would say that in 5 years, the composition of the TV and digital CTV video spend, which will be a combined market of, let's say, 90 billion, we'll probably see 50% or 60% of that will be very data driven. And so addressable, or what we'll say is proto addressable.
Okay, so then I'm going to skip the question of, do you all think that there will be a hybrid marketplace, literally selling addressable and connected together? I think James feels that they're already doing that at Comcast. It seems like that's the direction Roku is headed, and Dave, your company is clearly going to be looking at that. I am curious about your dealings with the agency community. How have the agencies responded to what clearly seems to be a bigger focus from their clients on the use of their first party data and the ability to leverage that, maybe scale it up to have more impact on the business, addressably, and the idea that addressable is not just about precision, but it's also about consumer experience and appropriate frequency management and all of those things. So I guess the question is, do you feel that that all agencies get this and are beginning to transact in the right way? Or do you feel there are some that are and some that aren't? And why don't we start with James?
Look, I think the buy side and the sell side reflect each other in many ways, as you have a spectrum of people and a spectrum of opinions and a spectrum of maturity in terms of sort of where different companies and different individuals in companies are in terms of their point of view there. From what I see from the agency standpoint, there is an increased desire, and it goes back to Dave's point around, I want to be able to deliver my audience. And I want to be able to deliver that audience wherever the audience is. Therefore, the line between sort of linear and CTV is increasingly false. It's just video.
But there's a smart way to do that, and they're just piling impressions, and then there's a smart way to add those things together, reach and frequency wise.
That's right. Which comes to the question of data. And the question of data is an interesting one, because obviously a number of agencies have acquired data assets, whether that be Publicis or Dentsu with sort of Epsilon and Merkle as examples.
Mm-hmm.
And that's right, because the agency wants to be able to find their audience in the most efficient way, but it also wants the sales side to be able to deliver that and yield its inventory the right way. So I would say that the topic that we're sort of really focused on at Comcast as it pertains to that is how best to kind of enable more data, how best to support more data-enabled executions while thinking about privacy regulation, protection of our consumers' data, and the fact that we believe in much more sort of decentralized models through which data needs to get leveraged to execute against the world where we're going. And we disagree with a model that's much more sort of centralized, walled gardens controlling all the data themselves. And so I think as we move to more of a audience-based future powered by quality data sets against a single pool of inventory measured against impressions, then it really opens up an interesting question around how do you do that, leveraging quality data sets while protecting the consumer experience, and considering privacy regulation as well.
Okay, so then Comcast does not want to be in a walled garden. Is that, am I hearing that correctly? Like, you're a proponent of interconnectedness.
Correct. We are from an advertising standpoint, and that's been consistent with our position in market about we believe that television in its broadest definition needs to act more as a platform to compete with the platforms. And Dave, it goes to your point about addressability. If you're a marketer, addressability is a tactic within a broader kind of broader set of things that a marketer wants to achieve. But if you look at just purely at that tactic of addressability, there's mass fragmentation across different.
Got to be able to see across them.
Right, and that makes it really hard, which is where alignment on how do we make it simpler for the marketer to buy at scale and then be able to deduplicate their audience to solve for reach and frequency gives the television industry a huge potential upside to, as Dave said, take more dollars from platform companies overall. So it's tricky, but there's a path.
Yeah, with me nodding, I think you understand where I sit. But Laukman, I want to know Roku's point of view on this, because I get a sense that Roku is headed in the walled garden direction, and I want to know if there's a willingness to participate in the interconnectedness that could potentially be an opportunity that all boats rise with, You're on mute, buddy. I can't believe I had to tell you that.
Sorry, this is the classic rookie mistake on Zoom. Walled garden discussion. We are not a walled garden. We've been very clear about that too. We are not a walled garden. Roku Media is available on third-party. What is a walled garden? It's about media. It's about data. It's about measurement, right? Roku Media is available on third-party DSPs. We have third-party data and first-party data matching happening all the time to actually allow targeting on our platforms based on other folks' data sets. We actually have a third-party measurement program that lets third parties measure the efficacy of media across the platform, everything from top of the funnel reach and frequency measurement to mid-funnel, bottom funnel metrics. So
you mean dedupe measurement across Roku, Amazon, and Comcast?
We are open to looking at ways in which we can actually do true holistic reach and frequency measurement. The problem is oftentimes with published, keep in mind, Roku is a platform. And the inventory that is sold within a Hulu, within a Disney, within an NBC is also owned by those respective partners, right? So, but we are open to figuring out ways in which, and we are working with partners both on the sell side and on the buy side and on the vendor side, on the measurement side, to do true cross-platform holistic reach and frequency measurement. In some ways, that was one of the rationale for the Nielsen partnership with the strategies to work with Nielsen or Nielsen One, because they are a player in the space historically, on figuring out what is the right currency, what is the way in which you take your, in my opinion, antiquated GRPs, and that's what we are all saying here, into a world where you can actually have a currency for cross-media measurement, right? So we are invested in that and we are moving in that direction. On your original question on agencies, I'll just make a quick point on that. I know we are running short of time here. Is they are a different they are at different points in their trajectory. I don't think they're all at the same place. They are looking at improving, going beyond their services model and providing data and tech and all of that to their respective clients. They are looking at not just data, first party and third party data, the Epsilon, the Axiom, the Merkle story, but beyond that on better first party matching. They're also the another way in which now we are starting our conversation with agencies on not just on the activation side, but on additional data sets that can help all the way from planning to pre-campaign planning to activation to post-campaign measurement, where there are techniques and technologies like data clean rooms, where both sides feel comfortable in the exchange of data. And we do it in a way where we keep consumer sensitivities in mind. We are compliant with privacy rules and regulations. And we're looking forward in which you can actually do analytics and measurement in a way where data doesn't really have to move around. They can still sit in their respective places, right? So those are the kind of ways in which we are looking at working with agencies. And increasingly, I've seen more and more support and forward-looking thinking from a lot of the larger agencies.
Okay, so Dave, is this really happening? Like, is there an interconnectedness that's available today?
Not, I mean, not in this, how we would imagine it could be. I think the key issues are, to start with on the agency front. Right now, most of the major clients are not willing to pay their agencies the kind of fees they need to do the work and invest in the tech and the data they need to get the job done. And so it's put the agencies in a tough spot that if they can't own some data, resell some data, it's hard to be able to deliver these kind of campaigns, as you know. And even the Trade Desk, which let's look at sort of a software-based agency support model, more than half of its revenue today now is selling data or reselling data. So I do think that what we will see is that we're going to see walled gardens in TV and connected TV, and maybe we all see it as a bad word, but there's also a lot of like quality control and that happened because of it, because fundamentally in premium video, demand exceeds supply, and it will continue. It always did in TV. It does in connected TV. It will as it expands.
More so.
Things.
Yeah.
So that means that the companies that own it are going to put controls on it. They're not going to let people scrape the data on their consumers. They're not going to let people do real-time price discovery through real-time bidding coming off a DSP. So we will see connection. And I think to the points that the Lachman makes, like, doing the deal with Nielsen so you can like actually, synthesize into the Nielsen currency. The fact that clearly that Comcast, like through Freewheel, is working with virtually all of the major streaming suppliers right now. So I think that we will see more walled gardens, but we're going to see more tightly controlled, well-curated, well-managed connectivity between them. And ideally, we'll see lots of good, strong, we're in an API world now too, so it's easier to do it than it ever was.
It just comes down to being in campaign and post-campaign, able to see the people you're serving your ads to across the gardens. I don't care if they're called walled gardens and
that's what I would quickly say. I think we get caught up as an industry, we get caught up in the semantics of the walled garden. We've forgotten what even a walled garden means sometimes. The point is about we do have a commitment and we are stewards of the consumer experience and the consumer data. That has to be kept in mind as we think about solving the problem from a marketer perspective too.
Right. Because
and solutions
not useful to the marketer if they have 14 different schedules they can't look across.
Right, but I would say that but there is a tactical point that's very important. You want to make sure you get verified reach and that you know that you got extension, and you want to make sure that it was correct when Lachman said they sold it to you. But what the marketer doesn't want and Lachman can't let is someone retargeting that person because they were able to get a cookie or a device ID on that incremental person and knows that they're a Roku person and they can now buy them elsewhere, which is what we let happen in the
No, you don't want that, but you also don't want to hit Chris Magel 5 times in each walled garden.
Right.
But Lachman makes the right delineation, because there's a difference between the traditional definition of a walled garden, which is like, I'm going to keep my toys all to myself and you can only do it on my properties and that's it, versus where I think we're all saying needs to be and must be an increased focus on putting in place the right data protections for both regulation reasons, but also what we need to do on behalf of the consumers that we all represent. But that doesn't mean there aren't technical ways through which companies can work with each other to provide the outputs needed without exposing the data. They're very different things, and I think that's what we're saying.
Okay, guys, this has been great. I have one final question for you guys, but I think we'll hold it till after we open up. I would like to open this up to any folks that are on the call who feel like they did not get an answer about something that's important to them right now from these guys. I think we can either do a hand raise or someone can speak up if you want. We got 10 minutes to do this, and I'm game to help moderate it however. And if we don't get somebody speaking up soon, I will call immediately on Tom Morgan.
I just unmuted. This year's upfronts were complete sellout, 20% in price increases. They're selling stuff that is, everything is not bolted down, they're selling and they're still ripping it off the walls, as far as I can tell. That means some of the inventory that had been in broadcast that was earmarked for moving into addressable, whatever, is now sucked up into that morass. How does this, and Dave, with the whole team, how does that dynamic impact the ability to start leveraging but what you're doing in streaming and go after the larger linear space? Yes, it's shrinking, but can you blend them given with that dynamic, what's going on?
Yeah, it's a really good point, Tom. And the fact is that a lot of the technical ways people were executing addressable inside linear was to basically have to waste a significant amount of the linear and make it available in lower value direct response campaigns or program promotion campaigns. And right now they were able to sell that stuff out the front door at a much higher price. So without question, it's going to put a big constraint on it. I think that the issue is that we've had too many sort of singular plan A only approaches to trying to bring addressable into the marketplace with an assumption that there was a lot of squishiness around the linear TV market that could be leveraged and just some value added. And right now we're finding that that won't be the answer. It's going to have to be done more holistically. And I think actually I'll call out, part of, Comcast, the NBCU strategy, where they're looking much more about every different, the C-flight approach to every impression is going to be valued similarly, and it's on an impression basis. And we're going to sell some of this and some of this and some of this, and we're going to aggregate it on an audience basis. And I think that we need to move further towards audience and optimization, and let's get caught up in what I'll see is one of the tactics to deliver it, which is linear addressable through, whether through the TV device, like through a Sorensen trigger, or through like an Effect TV X1 box.
Yeah, it's right. Addressable is a tactic as part of a broader need to deliver. Here is my audience, define this way, deliver me that audience and prove it, and do that across a single pool of inventory where I don't care what the screen is. Like the false delineation between linear and CTV, we're seeing in this upfronts is increasingly kind of being understood that it's going away, even if the execution systems in the back end, as I said earlier, have to be different until X years from now, when we are all operating all video on an IP infrastructure, which will happen, but it is probably more than 5 years unless others disagree.
I say 10.
Yeah. So there's a difference between hey, I want one plan delivered everywhere with one report back, to what's happening kind of beneath the surface to make that happen. And I agree with Dave, your earlier point, which is as we think about the full consumer purchase funnel, multi-screen TV still has the greatest reach available out there, period. And that matters. And it matters when you look at the direct-to-consumer companies who are piling more and more money into multi-screen TV, and they've got some of the most sophisticated back-end attribution models because they know it works. But there's going to be a lot more activity in the middle, which is deliver an audience across screens against an audience, and then lower down, addressable is a tactic that sort of supports that. And it's the combination of different solutions that media companies can bring to support a marketer down the purchase funnel with the right proof of performance, which is, I think, the thing that matters. And I think the things that the enablers that sit behind that are both infrastructure, incentives, which Dave, you called out earlier, which is key, and also moving to impression-based model.
and availability of inventory, because I think that the upfront's probably super oversold. Kent, Harvey, I think you had a question.
I do. And James, I'm aware you demand that I offer you only softball questions. So think of this as a 3-foot putt on a really fast green. So all three of you did interestingly say audience-led targeting is the future, and you're all going there in different ways. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But James, you led off your conversation with the phrase 66 markets, and everything that, frankly, a lot of things you've talked about, questions that were asked, stuff in that Wall Street Journal article are about, forget the geographies, right? Dave reaches audiences everywhere. Certainly Roku does. Do you see the future for Comcast where the geographic restrictions are gone and your team at Effective can sell the whole country any way you want?
So we're focused on the advertising business that I run. Our inventory comes largely from the carriage deals that we have, and therefore it's tied to the footprint. We already have a play in terms of being able to sell at a more national level through our partner Ampersand, which is a collaboration with Charter and Cox and Comcast as well as others. So that sort of model is in place. I think overall, bring the question back down to local. We see local as really, really critical and a huge differentiator for us. And in particular, what's been interesting during COVID, and it ties to sort of data enablement, is that national buyers are understanding the complementary nature sometimes of what the traditional kind of national programmers bring, and the ability to get incremental reach against the deduplicated audiences heavying up in specific geos based on whatever that marketing objective is. And so I think there's a much more sort of complementary nature than has been kind of perceived before.
Okay, I got two things we want to close with. One follow-up on this. Laukman, are you offering linear addressable yet?
Not yet, but that is a plan. The one thing I'll add on to it is we talk about linear addressable as if it is something really different from connected TV. Historically, we have heard terminologies like linear addressable, data.
Oh, we know they're the same. It's just that
they're all the same. My take is they're all the same. And our plan is to actually bring in linear addressable capabilities and bundle it in part of the CTV sale.
So you're going to have it. Okay, that's good. That's good. And then for each of you to close out the meeting, Laukman, I'll start with you. Over the next in 5 years, what's going to be more important than it is today? And in 5 years, what's going to be a lot less important than it is today?
I agree to what some folks have said, which is about I think TV is going to be increasingly about performance. So we do see a world where in 5 years, you are talking about performant TV at scale, which is not just about reach and frequency, which is not even about,
so performance TV.
It's much beyond. It's all about optimization and ML AI driven TV.
Okay, what's not going to be important?
I think we'll see a consolidation in the space between media owners and ad tech vendors, because it will be increasingly harder for independent ad tech that does not have direct access to consumer data to differentiate in the market.
Okay, James, same question.
I would say increasingly important scaled quality first party data. And scaled quality video inventory. The combination of those two matters for marketers. The thing that won't matter, I think Nielsen growth rating points are done.
Okay, Dave, anything less obvious?
Speed, flexibility, and performance is going to be more important. I think the content's going to be less important. I think that if you go back to when TVs TV's real growth moments in the 70s and 80s. The TV companies sold the market in by using numbers and data and performance. And it was only in the 90s and the aughts that they created, they basically created this aura around you must own this show. And so I think in 5 years, it's going to be much more about the performance in the audience and a lot less about the show.
Okay, and I will just add that maybe there'll be still a need for association with certain properties, but for the most part, the
Totally
stuff
agree.
in bulk, I agree with you. Everybody, thank you for joining our conversation. Thank you to Dave, Lockman, and James. Thanks to the Progress Partners folks. Thanks to Cerity Partners and Cohn Resnick. And I hope that this was a good use of the hour for everybody that attended. And if not, you have a right to email me because you already saw my email address in the beginning and tell me what an idiot I am. But I hope you felt like it was managed well and enjoyed your hour. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
This
everybody.
is great. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.